Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and you know what I love? Video games. You know what I also love? The law. You know when that intersects? Nintendo. Now, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, I'm sure all of you guys know about Palworld. Clearly, we've talked about it. We talked about their lawsuit with Nintendo in regards to the trademarks. But I've also talked about, Palworld being its, independent game that is strongly influenced by Nintendo. Now, if you ever played a game like Palworld, okay, just to give you an idea, it's one of these crafting style video games where, you just basically survive. You level up through various tiers of technology, kind of similar to games like Ark. There is a component where there are pals roaming the world, and you used to be able to throw little pal spheres. Add the pals, you watch the balls shake, and you basically captured them. Now, that sounds suspiciously similar to Pokemon. Well, let me tell you, the concealment of the fact wasn't really there. Even if you never played a video game before, I think it's fair to know that Palworld is a game that is very inspired by Pokemon. And while yes, it's easy to say it's Pokemon with guns, there is a team that put together, I guess, a dream game of theirs or something they would like to see, put it together, put it out on the Steam storefront, and it absolutely sold like gangbusters, hitting an all-time peak of 2.1 million users. Now, even to this day, there are actually still 38,512 people playing this game as of an hour ago. Comparing that to Cyberpunk 2077, which has 31,588 players as of an hour ago. Now, this is a big AAA game. These guys are indie players. And obviously, they've released expansion packs entirely for free. They have distributed this stuff entirely for free. And even amongst this entire lawsuit that has been happening, what is absolutely wild to see is the fact that they're actually selling themselves in Japan on the PlayStation Network. According to Palworld, this was back in November 2024 when I talked about it, they had mentioned that the plaintiffs, which would be Nintendo in this case, basically told them that they infringe upon 3 patents held by the plaintiffs and are seeking an injunction against the game. So the patents involve 754, 5191, yada yada yada, and to show you what this one patent in particular was this one right here. Game program, game system, game device, and game processing method. That is obviously, from Japan. And if you look at it, the problem is to provide a game program, a method that can cause a player character to perform various types of actions on the field in a virtual space. The solution. In a first mode, the aiming direction in the virtual space is determined based on the second operation input, and the player character is caused to fire an item that affects a field character arranged on a field. If this sounds way too abstract, it is actually just the fucking abstract. Now, if you look at the actual designs for this patent, this might just be the exact kill shot that Nintendo was really, banking on. The fact that your character could throw a ball into the wild, capture a Pokemon, and boom, it's yours. And initially, when I saw this and how Palworld had actually treated their game, this was probably the one thing that really struck out as the patent being infringed. Because what Pokemon is, at its core, is a monster hunting video game, a monster collecting video game, where you basically get monsters to dogfight against each other. The thing about it is, they're not the first ones in the game to do so, right? In a different way, you would say that games like Dragon Quest kind of mirror what Pokemon have done. And I believe at some point they've actually beaten maybe Pokemon to the punch based by release date. But also you've got other games too that also have a Pokemon capture style mechanic too. I would wager and say that, monster collecting kind of as a concept breeds beyond more than just Pokemon. Hell, even games like Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, in a way, almost feels like you're collecting monsters. You're just putting giant balloons on somebody's back, shooting them to the stratosphere, and collecting them for your overall experience. And sometimes you may be sending them out to battle, right? If that sounds interesting to you, seriously, play Metal Gear Solid 5. Absolute banger of a game. But yeah, since then, the guys over at Palworld, Pocket Pair, have actually not been taking this lying down. Not only have they released Palworld on the 360, the PlayStation, which, again, to release in the Japanese storefront while you're in the middle of a patent lawsuit is fucking insanity. But they've also made a publishing wing. So this indie developer has literally skyrocketed. And yeah, you could say that games like Palworld, I would say games like Craftopia that came before Palworld, are far more on the nose for Nintendo's games, like Breath of the Wild in that case's instance. Yeah, this is clearly, a game company, an independent game company that borrows very heavily from the games that they're really inspired by. Legend of Zelda, Pokemon, really Ark, I would say, is probably infringed on by this company when it comes to how Palworld plays out. But they put a good game together, they release it, and people really do seem to enjoy it, right? I'm not sitting here to make an entire video where I pit Palworld against Nintendo. It's really not the case. I'm actually more interested in how these patents are being brought in and how, this could actually affect gaming, going forward, right? Especially when it comes to, game mechanics, the things that realistically you like to see being implemented across the board. When you find any game developer make a good game mechanic, you probably see that implemented across the board. There was a period when games like Call of Duty 4 basically took the world by storm. And there was a time on the 360 PS3, and I know that some of you old heads remember it, when you played those games, every shooter came with a multiplayer suite. And that multiplayer suite tried to copy Call of Duty and its secret sauce as much as it could. Had Call of Duty, hyper patented their game, not to say that Call of Duty doesn't have patents, they absolutely very clearly do. If Call of Duty was super litigious on people making similar styles of multiplayer to it, I think gamers would rightfully get upset. If you make something awesome, people are going to be using it and then building on top of it, hopefully, to make something even better. And that's kind of what Palworld did. They produced a game that kind of filled in that mature gamer who wanted to play kind of a Pokemon title with some extra bells and whistles and AK-47s attached. They filled a market, they filled a niche that Nintendo wasn't going to fill anyways. Now, even when looking into things like patents, for instance, one patent that I found really fun was patent 8082499. For anybody that doesn't know what that shit is, this is the patent. If this dialogue wheel looks familiar to you, you played enough Mass Effect to know where I'm going. Yeah, this one was actually, again, patented by EA, specifically invented by Casey Hudson. Now, game companies patent game mechanics a lot more than you would expect. But in this case, there actually hasn't been an application that has been filed really against anyone, right? Like, EA has never really went after anybody for using the quote-unquote dialogue wheel. I also like the, just for a side's sake too, I also like how they include the diagrams. Here's this kid playing with his Xbox controller connected to his pencil sharpener, feeding the dialogue wheel to the little television. I love that shit, dude. They didn't even put the actual game in the television, it's just there. And of course, a good flowchart, right, where they show how you select an input, it plays the animation, and flowcharts basically the entire, functions programming. So why are we talking about Nintendo and Palworld so long after that initial lawsuit? Well, it's because according to, the industry and people that have been watching into it, I've been looking at this lawsuit a little bit, but, sites like GamesFray have actually been looking into this as well. Just because when you're talking about things like patents and obviously, the possible stifling of innovation and all these game mechanics in the industry, people are interested to see just how Nintendo's handling it. Like, yeah, this is happening in Japan, but what if Nintendo decides to bring this internationally? So basically, Nintendo has been filing patents at the US Patent Office, which obviously this is like their way to get this stuff updated and brought into in North America. And basically, this is probably going to be the case for the rest of the world. However, Nintendo hit a pretty serious legal snag. Now, what makes this super duper important is out of the 23 claims, the 22 that were actually rejected, apparently, were rejected because they are not basically inventive or not considered inventive over things like prior art. And the one that was merely objected to, the examiner in this situation, the people who are looking at the claims, basically had actually asked for just another review on this, right? Just to actually build up more of a review on the situation. Now, the objected claim in this case, the friends from GamesFray, who have done their analysis on there, have actually provided some pretty interesting, reads here. So it's a pretty clear instruction here. You can rewrite a claim to make it quote-unquote independent, as the current problem is that it is dependent on a rejected, claim. And it will normally, I guess, go through. But what does this mean? The terms are underlined. So again, according to this situation, Claim 22 says the non-transitory computer-readable storage medium having stored therein the game program, according to Claim 1, so yeah, they actually did mention specifically the first claim, where in association with the player character approaching a ground of a virtual space, while the player character is moving in the air aboard a airboarding character, so literally a mount, right, in this situation. So ideally, Games for has said in order for Nintendo to win, according to them, and again, this is no legal advice, they could literally copy and paste the entire language that you could read of Claim 1 and adding this paragraph. And unless the examiner in that case somehow changes their mind, that claim would, I guess in theory, go through. Nintendo would have a patent, however, in this case, with just one claim, which is, according to these guys, unusual in the field of technology, but they may potentially get it. The fact Nintendo hasn't done this is definitely one to watch, one reason to look at. How is it that one of the largest companies in the world, especially in the world of digital software and gaming, has just not done this, especially with the fact that if you actually look into the history of this case, these rejections weren't given like literally a couple days ago. Nintendo has had ample time to properly respond to this stuff, but they just really haven't. Now look, at the end of all this, it's pretty much apparent that Nintendo is filing so many things like this all over the world to basically protect their copyright, protect their trademark, protect their patented game design all over the world, right? And, again, I think most companies do this. Nintendo is just the one that people are watching because they're probably, the most litigious company, obviously, when it comes to this kind of technology. And look, at the end of all this, my stance on things like patents and game design is that I understand, for a game company that puts in millions of dollars into research and developing actual gameplay loops, gameplay ideas, there's probably stands a reason why somebody would patent their technologies. But at the end of all this, Nintendo decided to not go after another AAA company that was also selling a Mon-style game. They decided to go after an entire indie game, which again, they weren't really, in my opinion, hitting the patents that I think, or the copyright disputes that really they, in my opinion, actually had a case for, right? We could argue that some of the Mons in Palworld looked relatively similar to the point where, if you squinted your eyes a little bit, you did the squint test, you might actually see, similar characters. But they decided to go after things like rideable mounts, again, the ball throwing mechanic, which arguably, yes, that is very much the close to Pokemon gameplay loop that Palworld had, right? And it probably is a reason why I don't see a lot of other games with throwable Pokeballs, because maybe that is just too specific to Pokemon's game design, okay? Or a game that they are releasing sometime in the future, right? Pokemon Legends Arceus or Pokemon Legends AZ is actually around the corner. And if you think it's not going to resemble that ball throwing mechanic from Palworld, you'd be surprised. Looking at these patents being filed, it's clear that Nintendo is not standing down from any of this. For them, it's not the money either, right? They were charging 5 million yen per dispute over here, which I think all of the things tabulated to $70,000 US, which is more money than either company has spent just on legal fees and lawyers alone. I have to guarantee you, legal work is very expensive. For Nintendo, it's literally about protecting their bread and butter, okay? If you really look into Pokemon as a game franchise, I'm sure nothing Nintendo has on their list even competes to it, right? And then you're adding things like the merchandising, the various other forms of branding on top of it. Yeah, it's big business for Nintendo, and clearly they want to keep this shit as protected as they fucking can. And at the cost of, again, stifling real game innovation and creativity. Going after the independent company is never a good look. And it's one thing that Nintendo is kind of known for. To me, when I look at Nintendo's lawsuits, one of the funniest things that also happened literally this year, not too long ago, was this situation right here. Now, these guys are holding their victory papers against Nintendo. I believe at this moment in time, this is a store known as Super Mario, okay? Now, again, if you're catching it right now, you probably have realized, whoa, if this is your store's logo, Nintendo is sending a fucking drone strike to your house. Now, these guys could have simply changed their name and gotten away with it and probably never had to face Nintendo's legal wrath. But these guys decided they're going to dig their heels in and they're going to fight one of the largest gaming companies in the world. Okay, one of the largest companies in the world, they're going to fight their legal team. Okay, imagine if today you were running a little corner grocery store, right? And, you had your store was called Snow White for whatever fucking reason. And all of a sudden, Disney comes in and they're like, you're fucked. You know, do you challenge Disney's legal team? You know, do you go up against a team that can outspend you, even if they're probably 100% in the wrong, but they can bankrupt you to the point where you can't even continue your business? Most people would probably say, no, I'm not going to do that. But these guys over here at this supermarket store decided to dig their heels in, and based on one specific case from the International Class 35, apparently it gave this Costa Rican grocery store the right to use the name for use as the name on a grocery store. Alternatively, Nintendo currently holds the trademark for Super Mario in several fields. Its hold over the name does not reach the world of grocery stores and supermarkets, which kind of makes sense, right? Like, these are two separate businesses in their own separate universes. Like, imagine if in my neighborhood there was Some Ordinary Plumbing, you know, like just some guy's plumbing business, right? And we decided, yeah, we're going to take you to court because you use Some Ordinary as in your name. Now, I don't have that shit trademarked. We're not the fucking Fine Brothers here. We don't have any of this shit patented. So, you know, somebody wanted to use that name, go for it, okay? But yeah, it's like if I went to this guy's plumbing business and took him to court and somehow he won, or he did win, because he would say, yeah, that guy makes YouTube videos, I do plumbing work. We're in totally separate fields and businesses. I don't understand what the fuck I could be doing to infringe on that guy's trademarks, his patents, his copyright even. Unless the guy had like my image or something from us on their storefront or their advertising materials, sure. But this is not the case for Nintendo. And believe it or not, you know, there used to be that one joke, little Pablo in the fucking favela would put together like his own cardboard Game Boy, and Nintendo Legal would throw that kid into the fire pit. That actually kind of happened here. These people did eventually end up winning. And you can see the war stories this man is about to tell after this whole situation has broken out. This is crazy shit. Nintendo literally took these people and tried to take away their name, even though they posed absolutely no fucking threat to the company. Again, it's really just Nintendo that does this kind of stuff. But yeah, honestly, they're strengthening their patents, they're strengthening their trademarks, and normally this would make sense. This would be something every company does. But I personally, I have no doubt that this is all being done to strengthen the case against Palworld, to make sure that maybe in some ways, if they could injunct these people from selling their game in North America, in Europe, they probably could. But the fact that it's still selling in Japan shows that Palworld does keep fucking winning. And Nintendo, while they're trying to be threatening again, I'm glad anytime governments and bureaucracies jump in and say, no, you can't just start patenting stupid game mechanics, especially like this. Now, ultimately, like I said, millions of dollars to spend in innovating and creating new games, but I think patents in general, when it comes to game design and game development, serve more of a hindrance to the industry than it does, you know, actually let us take cool game mechanics and just keep building on top of them. I see no problem with innovation. I see when a company as large as Nintendo, and it could be Sony, it could be Microsoft doing this shit, if anybody steps in and ruins game innovation, that is something I think most gamers should be up against. But ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.